Good afternoon and welcome to this event where we are going to be exploring classics and ancient history. This is a UniTaster Tuesday. We run these events every single Tuesday and they're all about supporting students to make informed university decisions. So whether you're watching this live or watching this perhaps as part of your school group, or maybe watching this in your own time as an individual student, I hope you find this event really useful, and they're all about supporting you to make really good university decisions in the future. I'm delighted to be joined by three star-studded academics in the field of classics and ancient history today, and that's Professor Polly Lowe, who's joined us from Durham University, Dr. Ian Goh, who's joined us from Swansea University, and Justine Wolfenden, who's joining us as well from Durham. And what we're going to do is explore four main areas of classics and ancient history. Number one, we're going to look at why you might want to consider classics and ancient history as a course. Number two, we're going to explore actually what to expect on a classics and ancient history course. Number three, we're going to provide some application tips. So if you are interested in studying classics and ancient history, we're going to find some application tips so you can really make the most of that application and fingers crossed get the offers that you would like. And number four, we're also going to look at careers as well. So any student that's thinking about university, I hope will have one eye on their career opportunities after they finish university. And we're going to explore some career routes that often graduates of classics and ancient history go on to do in the future. I'm always conscious with these events, though you've not tuned in to hear from me, you've tuned in to hear from our excellent speakers, and today we're joined by the members of staff that I mentioned a second ago from Swansea University and also Durham University. And with that, if I can introduce our first speaker, that's Professor Polly Lowe. Polly is going to talk about two key areas. She's going to talk about what to expect if you do consider, if you are considering a classics and ancient history course, and Polly, of course, comes from an academic perspective on that. So she's just the type of person that might actually be delivering lectures or seminars, etc., or talking to you about research. And as well as that, Polly is also going to provide some application tips as well. And so if you are interested in studying classics and ancient history, perhaps some things that you might want to include in personal statements or anything else. Over to you, Polly.
Hello. So yes, my brief is to tell you what to expect if you're studying classics and ancient history. And that's actually quite a hard question to answer, I think, because it seems to me that the really sort of the most consistent thing about our subject is that it's incredibly diverse, that it covers a really wide range, and there's lots of potential for you to make different choices about exactly where you want to focus your particular interests. So at the heart of classics and ancient history, of course, are ancient Greece and ancient Rome, but what you might study as part of a degree in classics or ancient history could be any aspects of ancient Greek or Roman literature, language, philosophy, archaeology, or history. And also you might consider how those cultures and those civilizations relate to other cultures in the ancient world, in the Near East or in Egypt, and also how they've influenced and interacted with post-ancient or modern ideas of history, philosophy, and so on. For example, just talk about myself, I'm a Greek historian and I work on classical Greece and particularly politics, but in studying that, I don't just look at historical texts and documents, but also at what we would call literary texts, so tragedy and comedy and philosophical texts, and really the whole range of everything that's going on in the Greek world in the period that I look at. And also I think about other periods to compare them with my area of study. So to come back to the question I'm meant to be answering, which is what to expect, you can expect diversity and quite a lot of choice and flexibility. So a feature, I think, of all degree programs that you'll find in the field of classics and ancient history is that they tend to offer really a lot of choice and also quite a lot of variation. So something to keep an eye out for as you're comparing different degree programs in different universities is whether they have a particular focus or a particular expertise. So not all classics departments have ancient philosophy in them, for example. In Durham we do, and then there's a philosophy department that does modern philosophy. In some classics departments, all of philosophy is in that department. In others, ancient philosophy is studied by the philosophy department. So, and archaeology is another area where it might be divided up in slightly different ways. So keep an eye out for areas of focus, areas of expertise, but as a general rule, you'll find a lot of variation and quite a lot of choice. And that will affect what you're able to study as well. So a feature, I think, of all classics and ancient history degrees is that they tend to offer some scope for specialization, but then also room for you to look at other areas of the subject. And that's one of the good things about, the many good things about our subject, is you don't have to decide now when you're doing your A-levels exactly where your passion is going to be for the next 3 or 4 years. There's the scope for you to change your mind. I didn't think I wanted to be a Greek historian when I started out. I thought I wanted to do linguistics, and then sort of drifted into a different area over the course of my degree, and that's something that it's easy to do, or the scope to do in the course of your degree. That, to be a bit more specific about what to expect, I'll talk about how things are arranged at Durham, which is where I am, and then Dr. Go can give you how things look in Swansea. I think the way we do things is fairly common. So there are 3 single honours degrees: BA Classics with a focus on the ancient languages and literature. So that would involve study of Latin and or Greek, and then reading of texts as well. Classical Civilization, which doesn't require the study of the languages. It's an option, but it's not compulsory. And that looks at, as the name suggests, literature, but also culture, history, philosophy. So that's quite a wide-ranging degree, and ancient history, which is fairly obvious what that does. But in all of those degrees, you can also do things which aren't part of the core of the degree. So in an ancient history degree, you can study languages and literature. In a classics degree, you can study some ancient history. So you've got your sort of core of interest, but also the flexibility to do other stuff. There are always joint degree options as well. So in Durham, we don't have many. We have a joint degree with archaeology and a joint degree with modern history, but other stuff that you might find in other places would be joint degrees with English, modern languages, and that's, you know, part of this diversity of the subject, that we're interested in making connections outside our field. So if that's something that you want to do, then there's scope to do that in classics and ancient history. As I've said, there's lots of sort of overlap between the different degree programs. So probably one of the things you'll have to decide is where you want to focus your interests, but don't be too, it doesn't matter too much if your interests change. I think that's quite important, that you don't feel like you're absolutely committing to never doing anything apart from ancient history again, if that's the degree you go for. So it's more where your main interest is, not what your exclusive interest might be. Okay, the other thing I've been asked to talk about is application tips and how to apply. Because classical civilization, ancient history, Latin, Greek, those A-levels, they exist and they're taught in some schools, but they're not every school teaches them. Not everybody's had a chance to study them at school. What you will find, and I think this is true of all classics departments across the country, it's definitely true of Durham, is that we're very flexible about the A-levels that we look for. So in Durham, we have no required A-levels for any of our single honours degree programmes, and we don't discount any A-levels. The only A-levels we don't count are general studies and critical thinking, but I don't think anybody does those A-levels anymore anyway. So really any A-levels, you don't even have to be arts or essay based. So if you're doing maths or sciences, then that would be absolutely fine. Obviously, the subject when you come to study at university is quite essay focused often. So having some background or being confident that that's something you're going to enjoy, that's worth thinking about. But if you haven't done essay-based A-levels, that in itself isn't going to rule you out from applying or getting an offer for one of our degrees. Something that's really important to know is that there's no requirement to have studied Latin or Greek at school. So for most universities, you will just apply for whichever program you want to do, and then when you get here, then we will assess the level of language that you're at. And if you're a complete beginner at Latin and Greek and you want to study Latin and Greek, there'll be a course for you. If you've done a GCSE or an A-level, there'll be a course for you. A couple of places, I think Oxford and Cambridge are the places I have in mind, you might need to sort of commit at the point of application. That you might apply for a slightly different program if you're a beginner in Latin or Greek, but every single university in the country which offers classics or ancient history degrees has an option for students who haven't studied the languages at school, and that's really important to think about. Obviously, when we're looking at your applications, we want to see evidence that you're interested and you're committed to the subject. So if you haven't studied the subjects at school, or even if you have, use your personal statement as a place to explain why it is that you want to study classics, ancient history, classical civilization at university. That's what in Durham at least we're really looking for when we consider applications. I'll finish by showing you a slide to find out more. There's our website, Facebook and Twitter, lots of information about what we get up to on a day-to-day basis and the things that makes the department tick. So that's all from me.
Thank you very much. I'll just jump in just here, Professor Lowe, just to say a big thank you from me. It's John here from UniTasterDays. An excellent introduction to this event, looking at classics and ancient history, as well as some application tips, which I know for students is also very, very welcome. You know, certainly when looking at different A levels and students worried that perhaps the A level choice they made might have stopped them from taking particular routes. So you've probably put people's minds at ease there as well. But really appreciate that, and thank you also for fitting this into your very busy start of your schedule. So big thank you to Professor Polly Lowe joining us from Durham University. Our next speaker today is Dr. Ian Goh, who's joining us from Swansea University. Ian's going to talk about, from the perspective of a different university, almost what to expect on a classics and ancient history course, because Ian, as I said, is joining us from Swansea, whereas Polly is joining us from Durham. And as well as that, Ian is also going to look at perhaps some of the reasons actually you might want to be considering classics and ancient history should you not be sure of what to pick, and you're kind of exploring different courses as well. I'll pass straight over to Dr. Ian Goh, joining us from Swansea University, please.
Hi there. I'm, yes, as you've heard from John and Polly, I'm coming to you from Swansea, and I want to reiterate what Polly said just now about how a classics ancient history degree anywhere in the country is a broad church. You have the ability to explore whatever interests you, and the range of modules that are being put on in your department that you can take are designed to give you to cater to your interests, whatever they may be. I started out as a classicist because I'm interested in food very much, and I have here some of the constituent elements of a very famous source in Roman literature and Roman culture, which is garum, which is made essentially from fish guts and fish parts, which are left to ferment and then create a seasoning sauce, which was used, for instance, in salad dressings. There is a lot of debate over the actual uses of garum and what kinds were used in cooking. The two bottles I had on camera to say that this is not actually quite so odd a thing as you might expect, because both Worcestershire sauce and fish sauce from Asia contain anchovies or fish parts, which have been treated in this way as a seasoning. And in fact, Worcestershire sauce was derived from Asian catsup, a precursor to ketchup, but very different from the red sauce. My route into classics was through a kind of poetry which fixates on food, and I've always been interested in this kind of poetry, which is called satire, whose name is derived from foodstuffs, either a full dish of first fruits, a lank satyra presented to the gods, or a kind of stuffed sausage which was overfilled. And why that's interesting is that this genre of poetry, this kind of poetry, satire, is very is the only kind of poetry which the Romans came up with. They stole all their other literature from the Greeks, and this genre then is bound up with Roman identity and is in form a bit like stand-up comedy or a panel show even. But as I say, often has a lot to do with food. And garum, for instance, like I've been talking about, appears in the poetry of one of its practitioners, the author Horace, twice. Once when he says that the best garum comes from Spain, from Spanish fish, and again, when he talks about how fish guts can be used as part of the sauce, which will go into, which is brined and then added to salad dressing, or alternatively, a sauce for napping fish. So that is a quite particular way, and I suppose, to saying that you can in our field look into all sorts of interesting lights on, shine a light on any aspect of ancient culture. And one thing that I want to carry on from what Polly was saying is that that in a degree in classics and ancient history, you can access many things that you may not have heard about before or thought of before. So for instance, at Swansea, we offer modules that span a broad spectrum of the ancient world geographically. So on places, you can study places such as ancient Persia, ancient India, ancient Cyprus, and Roman Britain, just to name a few. And so, as well as that broad scope, you don't necessarily have to be working with texts. So, for instance, at Swansea, we try and privilege object handling and object-based learning, where you could be touching the objects from the museum on campus, and writing assignments related to those. The third thing is that although Polly is absolutely right to say that these are humanities degrees, and your ability to write an essay is of some significance, you should bear in mind that all over the country in classics departments, often at the forefront of pedagogical innovation, we don't always assign purely an exam or an essay as assessment. So, for instance, at my institution, Swansea, we have flexible assessments which include writing blog posts, writing the life cycle of an object from its inception to how it was collected by someone. You could design a website, make a video, as I say, write a blog post, write an opinion piece. So there's a lot more flexibility there in what we get you to do, to engage with and interact critically but creatively as well with the materials such as have survived. I might turn now to the other subject which I've been asked to talk about, which is, why classics or why ancient history? So what? Who cares? Why should we bother? And one thing I want, I guess I'm going to preempt a little what I think Justine is going to say by saying that it counts. It's important when you go to university to look into something, to do a degree in something that you are passionate about, because and this is purely from an employability perspective, and this is why I say I may be preempting what Justine is going to say. From an employability perspective, employers really want to see that you are engaging with material you care about, that you can explain why you care about it. So if you have had any interest in the ancient world at all, from a trip you've taken, or from reading about it, or from even watching documentaries, or any kind of engagement you've had with the ancient world before, if you look into it further in your degree and can explain why you are so keen on it, that is something that will serve you well as you join the workforce, I suppose. Another aspect of this is that a lot of degrees all over the country in classics and history privilege group work, and employers will want to see how you interact with your peers. Yeah? And I can guarantee that that doing a degree in any aspect of the ancient world, for instance, I had a dissertation student, and bear in mind that we give you research training through the course of a degree. I had a research student who wrote her dissertation about classical influences on hip hop and grime music, and it was so ingenious and really wonderfully innovative, and that's the kind of thing that you can explore through doing a degree in classics and ancient history, for instance. Another thing I want to stress is that these degrees are, these subjects are kind of magical in a way, because they have survived through the vagaries of time and through huge stress and cataclysmic events, texts, culture, rubble, you name it. It's managed to last somehow. And in some cases, it was just luck. In other cases, it's because it was so important, so critical. And one of the reasons why you should do a degree in classics and ancient history is because these subjects are kind of a bit magic. I know that sounds a bit hackneyed, but it's true. It's these subjects, in a sense, make life worth living. And with the additional bonus that very often through studying classics and ancient history, you can better understand how power works and the strategies which are used by the powerful, and what makes societies tick. And understanding that will enable you to, on the one hand, cope with it, but also to make a difference. Using the skills that any institution in this country will give to you, will train you up in if you do a degree in our subjects. So, not just if you're a little tired of the Tudors and Nazis, and you want to explore people with people from cultures who have names that are difficult to remember, but if you are interested at all in any aspect of the ancient world, these degrees are for you, and that's why you should. And that's why you should learn about the curse tablets or even garum. Back to you, Jon.
Thank you very much, Ian. An excellent session. I love the practical, the way you made it really practical as well, with probably the only ever appearance of Liam Perring's source in these UniTaster Tuesday events you've supplied. So really grateful for that. And also Dr. Ian Go, he came straight from a lecture as well to this event. So really, really appreciate your time, Ian. So that's Dr. Ian Go joining us from Swansea University, looking at two aspects. One, aspects of what to expect on a classics and ancient history course, but also with that, some reasons to consider that as well. So big thank you, Ian. Our final speaker today is Justine Wolfenden, who is joining us from Durham University. And Justine is going to talk about something incredibly important, and that is careers. Now, not all students think about long-term careers when they're picking choices when it comes to university, but it's so important. And Justine is going to provide an overview of that today. So with that, I will get straight to Justine now, because it's incredibly useful content, and I'll make myself a minimal part of it. So Justine, over to you, please.
Thanks, John, and thank you, Ian and Polly, as well. You said a load of really useful things that I can now draw on a little bit. So I'm going to share the screen to start. Where will you go? And also, where do you come from? We all bring different things, as my colleagues have said, to the study of classics. I didn't start as a career classicist. I didn't plan that I was doing that at school and then go into it straight away. I actually was going to do music initially, classical music. I played with orchestras. I had a place to do music and then changed my mind. I ended up for a few years before I went to university and reapplied and became a classicist, working in the music industry, actually the pop music industry. And I ran a record label, and I went on tour and I organised events. So sometimes people come to classics from other degrees, other subjects, other degrees, other experiences, other careers. And sometimes after classics, they go off into things that aren't just classics. And by classics, I mean classics, ancient history, classical civilization, joint honours with something else, perhaps Egyptology, all the things that Polly and Ian mentioned, that you can couple together with classics. It's very, very broad. So you will find that actually when you're teaching a group of students, you might teach a group of, say you've got a group of 100, you may only get a small percentage who go on and become career classicists. Unlike some degrees that are vocational and it's very clear that you do the degree and then you do the job that links to the degree, classics trains you for so many different things. Now, the Department of Classics and Ancient History at Durham University, it consistently performs well in the area of graduate employability. I've put some statistics there because I think they're useful to see. In the recent 2021 Guardian University Guide, we ranked first for employability. And what that means is that of all the universities offering classics in the UK or a related degree, of those that submitted data, because statistics are always based on the information that comes in, but of those that submitted the data, we, when according to their rankings, had the largest percentage of graduates who were in what they call graduate level jobs or further higher education or professional study, so further training, after 15 months, and that's the point when they survey students. And that sounds great. So obviously I'd like to say everybody come to us, but if I'm going to be completely honest, the difference between the person, the university at the top of the rankings and who is just next to them and down there is not that much. We're a small subject. Many of us know each other in the other departments. Many of us train together or have sort of bonds or friendships or connections to the other departments. Wherever you go to study classics, you are going to have a great training and a great foundation. And you need to think about where is the best place for you to study. Some people want to study in cities. Some want to study somewhere more rural. Some people want to study near a home. Some people want degrees that will include more practical elements, so a department where archaeology is a good fit for you, that might be where you go. Some people want to be in departments where they might have access to other kinds of degrees and resources, so you need to think about all those factors when you choose where to go. So the idea of these numbers, like if I go there I'll get a job, there are a lot of other factors. You no doubt will get a job, I'm sure, but the factors that affect what you do and where you go and where's the best fit for you extend beyond purely these statistics. I've given you them because, well, but it's only part of the story. Why are classicists? Why students who do our degrees, and by that I don't just mean at Durham, I mean at Swansea, and I mean around the country within the field, why are we so employable? Well, we provide you with, and employers recognise that we provide you with, high quality training, and that's in a range of relevant skill types: analytical, linguistic and cultural. You learn to read a lot of different languages in a way. You might think, oh, Latin and Greek, I don't want to learn those, I'm scared. I don't just mean that. You learn to read art, you learn to read inscriptions, you learn to read historical sources, to understand the significance of dates, to understand the significance of the geography and topography of a country, where we find these written sources or where the events took place that we are so fascinated by. So it's not just about that kind of linguistic, it's about engaging in reading a culture, reading a world, and understanding the journey that that material has gone on through time. And because classics is so interdisciplinary, you've got people who are working on ancient music, ancient maths, philosophy, science, computer games. As Ian mentioned, the rap and grime connection, you know, there are loads of different ways that you can take classics into the world or understand classics in relation to other things. So that very wide-ranging, high-quality training makes classicists really, really employable. You look at secondary scholarship, so scholarship written by authors about the sources that you read, that present big arguments, and you also look at lots of detail. And that sort of coming together of large-scale analysis and what we call close reading makes you remarkable. It makes you remarkable students. You might think, well, should I just work in a museum? Should I just be a classicist? No. Many classicists end up in the corporate sector. They end up as an analyst. And that could be intelligence analysts, it could be financial analysts. A lot of them go into law and accountancy. And if you think about something like law, well, you need to have a case, you need to know what the main argument will be, but you need to be able to state the precedents. And that's your big picture argument and your close reading right there, in support of, you know, a very important professional career. Skills that the humanities students more widely gain, which are skills that involve research, analysis and communication. And as Ian said, at his institution, Swansea, you know, they do reflective blogs and they might do oral assessments. So communication skills will come to you through your training in a range of different ways. These create dynamic graduates. And there's a report recently, it was the joint CBI UK report. It argued that these soft person-centered skills are often the best guarantor of employability. So, you know, wherever you train in the country, if you train in the subject, you will acquire really important skills that will make you highly employable. So, our degrees train you to differentiate between those primary and secondary sources and analyse them accordingly, as you would need to. You learn to compare and consider a very wide range of literary and material culture sources that are drawn for various media. You learn to develop and produce your own independent research based on engagement with these sources. So many of you will write a dissertation. You'll write an extended piece of writing. In my home institution, it's 12,000 words. In your final year, you write a 12,000 word, it's sort of like 3 to 4 chapter study and response to a question or series of questions that interest you on a topic related to classics. And this is great, you know, because you have to be the one who drives the car. You make the choices, you decide what to include, you set the agenda, you pick the questions, and that is really, really a useful thing to do to make yourself ready for the workplace, because you go into a job and they ask you to write a report and you're like, how do I do that? Your dissertation or equivalent type of assessment will prepare you for that. It will help you develop those skills. In terms of my own department, and this will be similar to many departments across the country, we offer employability and career sessions during induction. So when you come straight away, we set out what's available for you. We offer scholarly and transferable skills training in all our modules. So we have one eye, not just on the subject, but on the skills that you gain from that subject. So it's not just, I'm learning Latin, but it's, oh, I'm learning to think creatively, or I'm learning to arrange and order sources in a critical way. You'll have in our own department a support of what we call a level tutor and an academic mentor. So you'll have more directed guidance, not just on jobs, but on you developing as a person. And you being a happy, well-rounded person is, you know, going to make people want to work with you. And that's a great thing. Every institution will have some version of this setup. It just depends on the nature of the institution. We're a college university, so we have particular balance of support in the department and through the colleges. Other universities that are not college-based will have a different arrangement, but wherever you go, there'll be some kind of support of that ilk. We do a particular thing, this departmental award scheme on the Durham award scheme, and you can do skills audit support, so you can do a skills audit support. We're not running the award in our department this year, but there are centrally run things in the college, and these are ways in which you can test what skills I've got and have practice in coming up with examples of, here's a time when I challenged myself, here's a time when I had to come up with a proposal at short notice, here's a time when I did X or Y. So there are ways in which these sorts of awards, you don't get a big prize, but they're more about you developing your skills, and run through the university to give you practice in the kinds of questions that you may be asked to interview when you go out into the workplace or to start applying for jobs. We also have a careers liaison officer in the department. That is a member of staff. They're an academic staff member, so they're a classicist of some kind, and they will liaise with the person at the Central Careers Centre to set up a programme of events or support for the students that is giving the perspective on how this links in with the subject. We often run alumni and career events that we make available to all years, and we have what we call our Beyond the BA event, and we let our second and third years come to that, and we run that with our director of postgraduate talk programs and our liaison from the Careers and Enterprise Centre, and they come down and they talk about what happens if you want to do further study, mainly in classics, but they do talk about study in other subjects too, and our liaison talks about careers more generally. The university has its own centre, the Careers and Enterprise Centre. We have this person who's specifically a liaison officer for classics. They send on advice, you can have individual appointments, there's a library with resources. Obviously at the moment you can't really go there in person, but you can consult the online resources, and there are these sector guides that give you tips on, if I wanted to go into this kind of career sector, what things would I need to do to prepare myself? And they'll offer advice on CVs, applications and interviews. Now we have that, and I know for certain that there are these centres attached to pretty much, well, as far as I know, every university or college that you would apply for would have some variation on this. So this is the sort of support that you will get if you do a degree in classics at most universities in the country. And the university more widely at Durham offers this skills audit, so you can test your skills. It gives you, we have placement officers who will help you to get placements. You can also add in a year abroad and study there. That can help you to practice a modern language if you have one, or to help you develop the skills if you don't, and to acquire them. You can also get placements in different kinds of workplaces. It doesn't have to be classics specifically related. The university offers help with different types of training, so throughout your degree you could be training your skills. There are student events and there are weekly mail outs, so we keep you in the loop. Not everybody in the first week knows what they want to do. I certainly didn't, and many people change their mind, and that's okay too. But the reason to engage with things, and you know, I mentioned these things here, I've got 2 slides on this, things for you to think about once you get there: applying for internships, asking if you can shadow someone. Maybe it's not an official internship, but you might have a friend who's got a parent who's got a particular job, or a sibling. Could I see what it's like at your job? Knowing when the deadlines are so that you don't miss them. And these are things that we can encourage our students to be aware of. And why? Because one of the most important things, I think, is to find out what you don't want to do just as much as finding out what you do. And the best way to do that is to work on yourself, figure out who you are. Many people say to me, I really want to have this job. And I say, well, do you know anything about it? Have you tried it? Have you shadowed somebody? Have you done an internship? No, it'll suit me. And then I'm like, well, what do you think it will be like? I have to have a job that means I close the door, because I'm quite naturally, I can talk to you, all of you, but I'm naturally quite introverted. So I find that when I teach, everyone's like, you know, lots of energy and it's very buzzy, but privately I need to be able to shut the door and just build my energy up again. Having a job where I was at the front desk or in an office with a suit and I had to be switched on all the time would really not suit me. And knowing those sorts of things about myself has changed who I am in relation to work. It doesn't mean that I don't try those things or sometimes can do them, but it means that I'm conscious that I need a job that allows me to play to my strengths, and finding out what they are is an important part of developing yourself. So having some awareness of how you would get the skills and the experience once you start to think of jobs is an important part of the university experience too, and we help you with that. And again, placements, like I say, there are placement officers in our university, or the universities have some version of that, and thinking the whole time about transferable skills, not just what an author says, but why do they say it, and then what skill am I acquiring? So I could tell you the plot of the Aeneid, but is that the transferable skill? Do I walk into a job, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a company of Farquhar and Farquhar, if that's a real company, I'm sorry, I made them up. But do I go in and say, oh, give me a job with you, I can tell you the plot of the Aeneid? No, I go in and I say, I can process lots of different material in an intelligent and inquiring way. I can make useful observations about it. I can ask good questions. I can communicate with a team and develop a report on it. These are the ideas, these are the sorts of things that we think of as transferable skills, not just the content of the subject, but the ways in which you can talk about it and feel yourself becoming more competent to work independently and critically. And also bear in mind references. Sometimes we come to uni and it's like, woohoo, and we forget that the people who are teaching us, that we've just not let know that we can't hand that working on time, will be writing us references. And I'm not trying to scare you, but just always have a think about who am I dealing with, and would they be a good person to speak on my behalf at the point where I'm applying? And having all those things in your mind is a lot to hold in. That's why we help you with it and remind you of these things periodically. But just sort of keeping some of that in mind can be a really useful and important part of the process. So there are some people with jobs, I'll leave you with that. I don't know if that's what you want to do or who you want to be, but there are lots of people with jobs, so maybe that'll be you in a few years' time, especially if you've got a time machine. But just more widely, I'll just tell you a couple of things. We have students who've gone into politics, we have students who've gone into law, we have students who've gone into accountancy, a lot of teachers, people in the museum studies. We have somebody who's a journalist for a magazine about articulated lorries that do deliveries around the country. She is amazing. We have students who work in the arts. We have some students who've gone on and retrained as medical doctors. We have some who work in administration and things like the NHS. Our students, and the students of Ian and the students of all classes in the country, are usually, they're equipped for so much, and the subjects will help you to develop yourself in such a way that you'll hopefully be an employable and pleasant graduate when the time comes. Okay, well, thank you very much.